Obviously, this is not Lincoln Riley's ex-husband for real that said this, what I'm about to go over here in this video, and I don't mean this in a any type of sexual way at all. This is just how I refer to a significant group, really, of Oklahoma fans who can't get over the Lincoln Riley to Southern Cal thing. They're like battered ex-wives. They're like an eighth grade girl who got ditched for the sock hop dance in the gym. Like, they just can't believe, they still can't get over the fact that Lincoln Riley gave them one of these, packed up and left in the middle of the night for Southern Cal. They just can't get over it. Now, the whole time Lincoln Riley was there, they thought he was the greatest coach ever in the history of history. Now he's at Southern Cal. They think he's going 0-12 every single year. So there's a whole group of Oklahoma fans that fit in this category. They won't even say Lincoln Riley's name. They refer to him as TBOW, that bitch out west. It's scorned lover syndrome. I mean, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And that's the analogy I'm making here in the title of this video, by referring to this scholarly individual I'm about to talk about as Lincoln Riley's ex-husband. Obviously, they were never married. I'm not suggesting Lincoln Riley is gay. That's not the point. This is an analogy. Please don't let it go over your head. So, what started all this was a conversation about Colorado, okay? And talking about some of Colorado's stats through 3 games of the season, mainly their defensive stats, which are just horrendous, okay? And this video is not about Colorado and how bad they are. So don't, oh, here he goes again with Colorado. This isn't about Colorado. This is about Lincoln Riley's ex-husbands who can't get over them leaving, and the levels of delusion they're willing to go to convince themselves that they're better off now than they were before, and that Lincoln Riley is terrible and Southern Cal will never accomplish anything. So we were in the thread of this Twitter feed, we were talking about some of Colorado's defensive stats and how bad they are. Scoring defense, total defense, pass defense, rush defense, rushing offense, just all these things that are, and I made the point there in that thread that basically they can throw the ball really good, and that's about it. Like, they can't run the ball offensively, or they're great at throwing the ball, they can't run it, and then everything on defense is horrendous. And that's just the truth about Colorado. Again, this is not a Colorado video or the point of where this conversation went. An Oklahoma fan shows up in the thread of this conversation and says, there's no difference between Colorado and Southern Cal. No difference between Colorado right now and Southern Cal right now. Now, besides the fact of how obviously ignorant that is just on the surface, just on its face, his point was not to... He wasn't arguing that people were wrong in saying that Colorado was bad in those statistical categories. That wasn't his point at all. His point it was not... In other words, because there were some people in that thread that were coming to Colorado's defense. That's not what he was doing. He came into the thread to say, yes, it's true. Colorado is horrendous. And Southern Cal is just like Colorado this year. They're the exact same team, he said. My mind was immediately blown. And this was before I knew he was an Oklahoma fan. I had to click on his profile, and you know how you go and you figure out what they are or whatever. He's an Oklahoma fan, and right then I knew right away what was going on. But this guy wouldn't let it go. He says there's no difference right now between Colorado and Southern Cal. This is just insanity. Now, first of all, if you've watched any college football at all this year, any Southern Cal at all, any Colorado at all, you're already laughing and knowing how ridiculous of a statement that is for him to say that. And again, this just goes to show you the level of delusion that is going on in some Oklahoma fans' minds when it comes to Lincoln Riley. They cannot get over it. They're like a girl at a Sweet 16 party and their boyfriend dumped them right before dinner. And they just cannot get over it. Colorado and Southern Cal are the exact same team, and he defended his stance, and he said, yeah, all Southern Cal can do is throw the ball. No, first of all, that's just not true, okay? But to make the statement they're the same team is so ridiculous, so I went and looked it up. And again, I'm not a stats guy. I'm a watch football and draw conclusions guy, and I believe that any sane individual that has watched Colorado and Southern Cal play this year couldn't possibly come to the conclusion that they're quote-unquote the same team. And I'm not even talking about who's better or worse as a team. But to refer to them as the same team is so ridiculous. And this guy argued the point for 2 hours in a Twitter thread. I mean, everybody in the thread was laughing at him. But you know how people are. Once they make a statement and they feel backed up into a corner, they just double down on it. They just refuse to admit they're wrong. And that's what was going on here. He'll lay his head on whatever tiny pillow he has at home tonight and he'll know he was wrong. He'll just never admit it on the internet. But so it's not even whether or not one is better than the other. That's besides the point. And I'll give you an example. You can take two teams who are clearly both really, really good, and maybe it's hard to differentiate who's even better at all between the two of them, which I do not think is the case with Southern Cal and Colorado, by the way. I think Southern Cal is way better than Colorado, and we'll get to that part of mine and his conversation in a second. But let's take like a couple of top 5 teams just right now. Let's take Georgia and Ohio State, okay? Now, sure, there are going to be a lot of people who think Georgia's better than Ohio State. There's also going to be a lot of people who think Ohio State's better than Georgia. But I think everybody can agree that whatever the difference is between Georgia and Ohio State as far as who's better or not isn't very big, right? But no one in their right mind would say that Georgia and Ohio State are the same team. They're clearly not the same team, right? Two totally different philosophies on how the program is run, two totally different offenses, two totally different styles and forms of defense. Like, they're not even close to the same team. They just happen to both be good. So this debate that we were having here has nothing to do with who's the better or the worse team. And again, his point was not that Colorado is good. He actually agreed with the stats that were posted in the general consensus of the thread, which is that Colorado's not very good. His point was that Southern Cal is also not very good. In fact, they're the same team as Colorado. Mind blown. So I'm not a stats guy, so I wasn't able to quote or rattle off a bunch of stats. I can watch Colorado play 3 weeks of the season. I can watch Southern Cal play 3-4 weeks of the season. I can clearly see they're not the same team. Not even close to being quote-unquote the same team. But I went and looked up some stats anyway. So rushing offense. Okay, again, according to this guy, all Southern Cal and Lincoln Riley can do is throw the ball and nothing else. They can't run the ball and they're terrible at defense. They're the exact same as Southern Cal, were his words. Okay. Southern Cal runs the ball for 185 yards a game. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Colorado runs the ball for 61 yards a game. That's near dead last in the country out of 130-something teams. Not even remotely the same, buddy. Scoring defense. Because, look, I'm no Lincoln Riley super fan. I have been hypercritical of Lincoln Riley and his defenses for years, okay? This is not meant as a defense of Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley has had terrible defenses every year he's been a head coach. I think if you've watched Southern Cal play this year, you can see that their defense is a little bit better. Again, watch football. But I looked up the numbers anyway. Scoring defense, not amazing for Southern Cal, as you might imagine. But guess what? 29th in the country. 29th in the country is not terrible. Okay? Some of those Oklahoma teams, he was in the hundreds in scoring defense. Colorado, same category, 90th. So, no, these are not the same team. Rush offense, Southern Cal rush offense, 185 a game. Colorado rush offense, 61. Not even close. Scoring defense, USC 29th in the country, Colorado 90th in the country. Let's continue. Total defense. Now, this is an area where Southern Cal struggles, and that struggle continues this year. They've given up an average of 368 yards per game. That is a lot of yardage to be given up per game. In no world is that an elite level defense. However, it's also not even close to being nearly as bad as Colorado's. Colorado's giving up 460 yards per game. So again, no, they are not the same team. Scoring offense. Now this one ought to be close, right? Because everyone knows Lincoln Riley's going to have a great offense, and if you've watched any Colorado at all this year, you know they score a lot of points. This one's probably pretty close, isn't it? Nope. Southern Cal's averaging 59 points per game. Colorado, 41. 41 is really good, by the way. Look, averaging 41 points a game is really, really good. But it's not, quote unquote, the same as Colorado. They're averaging almost 20 more points, almost 3 touchdowns more per game. Oh, God. What about passing offense? Now, here we got one that's the same. Passing offense. Southern Cal's got the third best passing offense in the country. This is passing yards per game. Colorado, second. So, in literally every major category, they are close in one passing offense. But the idea that that neither team can run the ball, no. Southern Cal, 185 yards a game on the ground, which is really good. Colorado, 61, which is non-existent and near the bottom of the 130-team list. Scoring defense, USC 29th, Colorado 90th. Total defense, Southern Cal 368 yards per game, Colorado almost 100 more at 460 yards per game. And scoring offense, a 3-touchdown difference, 59 points per game for Southern Cal, 41 for Colorado. No, Southern Cal and Colorado are not, quote-unquote, the same team. Battered wife syndrome has blinded you. It has turned you so football ignorant you can't see straight. And it's got you running around the internet embarrassing yourself in front of God and anybody else with a Twitter account. Man, you need to stop and log off. I'm serious. Log off for a while. This jealousy or whatever it is you have, this just absolute hatred of Lincoln Riley. Look, I don't hate Lincoln Riley. I've just watched Lincoln Riley be a head coach for years and not been happy with the defense, okay? I picked Southern Cal to make the playoffs this year. I'm no Lincoln Riley hater. I know what he is. Lincoln Riley's got a terrible defense. And he even says this in the comments. He's like, Southern Cal's, and Lincoln Riley's had a terrible defense every year. And yet somehow you think they're going to make the playoffs. And Colorado's got a terrible defense and they're not or something. And I was like, first of all, no, Colorado's not making the playoffs. Second of all, yeah, I've seen Lincoln Riley make the playoffs not once, not twice, but 3 times with a terrible defense. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Southern Cal made the playoffs. Now, that's a preseason prediction. Look, it's hard to predict the 4 playoff teams in the preseason. It's really hard to do. How many people picked TCU last year? Not very many people. My playoff predictions in the preseason were Georgia, Michigan, Texas, and Southern Cal. I'm no more confident in those predictions today than I was when I made them. It's hard to pick the 4-team playoffs. I do know of those 4 teams, they have a grand total of 0 losses, though. So I'm feeling better than the people that picked Alabama or Clemson or Texas A&M or whoever else, or Colorado or whatever. I don't know if I picked Colorado, but anyway. So the point is, I'm no Lincoln Riley fan. I'm no Lincoln Riley hater. He usually has a really good team almost every single year that he's a head coach. Made the playoffs 3 times, won the Big 12 a bunch of times, almost won the Pac-12 in his first year there last year. Came up 1 game short of winning the Pac-12 and 1 game short of making the playoffs. Is it out of the realm of possibility to think that Southern Cal can improve by 1 game over last year? No. And so far, their defense is playing better than it was last year. That's just a fact. But to get back to the original point, Lincoln Riley, battered ex-wife syndrome. These Lincoln Riley ex-husbands, which is basically what they are, just these people who have been, they've had their head in the sand for 1.5 years now because Brent Venables was terrible last year and they got all nervous and didn't know how to act. And meanwhile, they had to pretend they hate Lincoln Riley. Then they watched Lincoln Riley win 10, 11 games last year and playing a New Year's 6 game for Southern Cal while Oklahoma was busy with a 500 record, giving up 30 points every time they took the field. Now, Oklahoma looks better this year. So does Southern Cal. And they're still mad about that. Southern Cal would beat Oklahoma right now by 4 touchdowns. And that makes the Lincoln Riley ex-husbands really, really mad. Hey, Twitter man, Oklahoma man, battered ex-wife man, Lincoln Riley ex-husband man, log off, buddy.